Our readings today, our first reading is from Isaiah 41, verses 5 through 10. The coastlands have seen and are afraid. The ends of the earth tremble. They have drawn near and come. Each one helps the other, saying to one another, "Take courage." The artisan encourages the goldsmith, and the one who smooths with the hammer encourages the one who strikes with the anvil, saying of the soldering, "It is good." And they fasten it with nails so that it cannot be moved. But you, Israel, my servant, Jacob, whom I have chosen, the offspring of Abraham, my friend, you whom I take from the ends of the earth and call from the farthest corners, saying to you, "You are my servant." I have chosen you and not cast you off. Do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you. I will help you. I will hold you with my victorious right hand. Our second reading today is from Matthew chapter 1, verses 18 through 25. Now the birth of Jesus, the Messiah, took place this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they had lived together, she was found to be pregnant from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a religious man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to divorce her quietly. But just when he'd resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife. For the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins." All this took place to fulfill what had been spoken by the Lord through the prophet. "Look, the virgin shall become pregnant and give birth to a son, and they shall name him Emmanuel," which means God is with us. When Joseph awoke from sleep, he did as the angel of the Lord commanded him. He took her as his wife, but had no paternal relations with her until she had given birth to a son, and he named him Jesus.
I kind of like how that prayer confession was kind of like, okay, let's start over. It's okay. It's almost like that prayer of confession was like, we're a fail-free zone, right? I didn't plan that. Holy Spirit works in mysterious ways. Good morning. My name is Jesse, and I'm a fixer. Clinically and sociologically speaking, the word most often used is codependent. But I don't like that word because it sounds derogatory, and I feel that it's used to shame people. Let's back up. When someone tells me that I'm being codependent, I feel like I'm being shamed. Also, I spent most of my life not knowing what the word codependent even meant. I mean, I thought it meant something like, "Oh, I can't live without you," which, there's something maybe a little romantic about that. Like, "Oh, that's my wife. I don't know whether I could live without her." But someone finally opened my eyes to what codependency is and what it really means. It means you are more concerned about somebody else's problems than you are your own. Any self-inventory going on in here? Uh-oh. And what do codependents do? Well, they try to fix other people's problems. And if the other person lets them and then starts to rely on that person to fix their problems, well, then you've got a codependent relationship going on. As Barbara Mead used to say, "Oh, crud." Indeed. Now hold on to that idea, not the fixing part. Hold on to that idea, because it turns out this is what Joseph is doing in today's story. So let's take a look at our text for the week that Dave read. Our theme for Advent this year is hope instead of fear. And let me tell you, fear is all over Matthew's Christmas story, the nativity story, whether we notice it or not. Because you see it when Joseph plans to dismiss Mary quietly. And you hear it when the angel has to immediately say, "Do not be afraid." And you feel it in the world that Jesus was born into, a fragile family, an unwed mother, and an empire that responds to threats with control and violence. So really, it's easy to overlook Joseph's fear because the story just moves so quickly into his obedience. But Joseph isn't calm and confident here, at least at first. He's scared. Scared of public disgrace, scared of religious judgment, scared of what this whole thing could cost him. And we need to be honest about the stakes here, because in a world where women could be punished, sometimes violently, for suspected adultery, Mary's pregnancy wasn't just embarrassing, it was dangerous. So, what Joseph does next is more than just doing the right thing. He doesn't fix the situation. There's no codependency going on here. He doesn't make the danger disappear or go away. He simply decides not to let Mary face it alone. In other words, he says, "I'll stay. I will share the risk. Just give me your hand." And when the angel tells Joseph, "Do not be afraid," it's not because there's nothing to fear. It's because God is already at work in this situation. God isn't expecting Joseph to be a hero. Joseph is being invited to participate. See the difference? In a world obsessed with power, reputation, and control, Joseph's choice to participate is radical, but in a quiet sort of way. Because he sets aside the right that the law gives him to walk away without consequences. He chooses care over control. And that choice puts him right in the middle of what God's doing. This isn't just personal, this has consequences. Because a child who is already being referred to as King of the Jews is a threat to the powers that be. And as we all know, when empire feels threatened, it responds with fear and violence. But God responds differently. God responds with dreams, with courage, and just ordinary people who are willing to show up. There's that phrase again, willing to show up. You all get that. I know you do because you prove it every day. Joseph becomes not just a guardian of Mary's dignity, but also a protector of Jesus' life. We might imagine a quiet moment between Mary and Joseph. She has already said yes to God, but that yes didn't make her fearless. She still needs a companion. She still needs someone to walk beside her. And Joseph, who is moved by this divine little whisper, reaches through his own fear to offer God's presence. The story is not just about them either, okay? It's also about us. Because there are a lot of people in our community today who, like Mary, carry some secrets, heavy things, something that puts them at risk. Maybe it's their identity. Maybe it's their truth. Maybe their calling. And even maybe their hope. What do you mean? Hope's going to get you in trouble? And there are others, like Joseph, who have more security, who have more safety, who have more voice. And so Advent invites us to not just simply be not afraid, but to act with love in the midst of fear. Not to fix everything, not to be codependents, but to show up with courage, to reach out and say, give me your hand. This kind of love, rooted in risk, humility, and faith, is what Isaiah evokes when he writes, each one helps the other, saying to one another, take courage. Do not fear, for I am with you. God's work in the world unfolds not through lone heroes, but through the joined hands of those who choose relationship over self-protection, accompaniment over certainty, and pressure over perfection. Mary's yes mattered. But so did Joseph's. So do ours. And because our yes matters, I want to leave you with a few questions. You're getting it. Of course, I've got questions for you this week. Not to answer today, all right? These questions aren't for you to answer today, but to live with, at least for part of this week, at least until we come together on Wednesday for our Candlelight Christmas Eve service. Question number 1. Have you noticed lately how much of the news that we receive these days is driven by fear? Fear that divides us and teaches us to distrust one another. Take a moment to think about a story or a headline you've encountered recently that has stirred fear in you towards a person or a group of people. And I want you to ask, what did that fear push you towards? Withdrawal? Suspicion? Anger? Now, think of a different moment. A time when fear didn't isolate you, but actually led you to connection and to support. What made the difference? I know that was a lot of questions, but that was like part 1 of the 3 questions here. Part 2. Mary's yes didn't erase the danger she faced. Being pregnant out of wedlock still placed her at great risk. She needed Joseph to take her hand, to stand with her, and to help protect her and her child. In what ways might our church, our wider community, be called to stand in solidarity with people who are vulnerable today? And then last one, and this is purely speculative. Imagine for a moment if Joseph had gone through with his plan to dismiss Mary, which he had every right to. Would her child have survived? Would God have found another way? And what does that possibility tell us about how deeply God's work in the world depends on ordinary people showing up and just saying yes? This week, we are not called to fix the world. We're not fixers. We're not codependent. Well, sometimes we are, but as it relates to what we're talking about this morning, as it relates to our mission, we are asked to take each other's hands and walk forward into it together. And friends, as we carry that invitation with us this week, I hope that you'll be able to join us here in the sanctuary on Wednesday evening, Christmas Eve service at 7 o'clock, where we will be joining our sisters and brothers from Chico First Baptist Church to celebrate the birth of the Christ child.